Madam President.
Senator from Washington.
Madam President, I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to the consideration of calendar number 33, H-Con Res 25, that the amendment which is at the desk, the text of S-Con Res 8, the budget resolution passed by the Senate, be inserted in lieu thereof, that H-Con Res 25 as amended be agreed to, the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table, the Senate insist on its amendment, request a conference with the House on the disagreeing votes of the two houses, and the chair be authorized to appoint conferees on the part of the Senate, all with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Reserving the right to object, I would ask consent that the senator modify her request so that it not be in order for the Senate to consider a conference report that includes tax increases or reconciliation instructions to increase taxes or raise the debt limit.
Madam President.
Is there objection to the modified request?
Madam President, reserving the right to object, what the senator is asking is that we go back to what we had votes on throughout the entire budget debate, way into the morning hours, on the issues of reconciliation, on the issues of revenue, that were all debated and voted. Some passed, some were defeated. We are not going to take those up again. We are going to go to conference with the budget that was passed by the majority in the Senate and by the majority in the House, and those views will be represented in conference. But we can't get to that debate and that discussion without moving to conference. So I object to his unanimous request and ask for consent on my request again.
Objection is heard to the modified request. Is there objection to the original request?
Object.
Objection is heard.
Madam President.
Senator from Washington.
Well, Madam President, this is so challenging. It's now been 47 days since we passed our budget. Senate Democrats have now requested unanimous consent to move to conference, the next step, 5 times. We want to take the next step in this process. We want to move forward under regular order and continue this debate in an open and public way. But every time we try to take it to the next step, Senate Republicans stand up and they say no. Madam President, I think this comes as a surprise to the American people. I think they're disappointed. I know I am. I think a lot of people, myself included, expected that after calling for regular order so consistently for so long, Republicans would be eager now to take the next step in the process. Now, some Republicans say they want to negotiate a framework behind closed doors before they agree going to conference. But, Madam President, that's what a budget is. It is a framework that lays out our values and our priorities and helps us plan for our country's future. Why can't we discuss that framework in a formal public conference, which is what we call regular order? Madam President, I'm sure Republicans are not excited about the prospect of defending their extreme budget all over again in a public conference committee. We have seen time and again, and we all know Americans are not interested in more tax breaks for the wealthiest. They're not interested in Medicare vouchers, but Republicans wrote that budget, they voted for it, they passed it, they ought to be happy to defend it. I will say this, Madam President, I know Senate Democrats are happy to stand up and talk about ours. The American people now deserve to see those two visions. They need to see our visions side by side, contrasted with each other, and they need to see who's willing to compromise and who is not. Now, we have heard that the House Republican leadership doesn't want the Senate to appoint conferees because they don't want to go to conference, because they might have to take a lot of difficult votes in the House. Well, I'm sure my colleagues here remember the vote-a-rama that we had before we passed our budget. We considered over 100 amendments. We were here till 5 a.m. in the morning, the entire time voting on amendments, till every senator who wanted to be heard and offered an amendment did. And we had a very, very thorough and open debate, and we voted a lot. So I don't think the American people are going to be very sympathetic to the argument that the Republicans here don't want to go to conference because they're afraid that the House has to take a few votes. So, Madam President, it's deeply disappointing to me that Republicans are now running away from regular order. And in fact, they are, running right towards another crisis. And they are willing to take our American families and our economy along for the ride. Now, it should be noted that the House Republicans have announced a new conference. But it is not a conference on a budget deal. It's a conference of their Republican members to decide what they are going to demand in exchange for tanking our economy over the debt ceiling. It's absurd, and it's not going to happen. We know because we went through this same thing last time when we approached the debt limit. Just a few months ago, Republicans realized how dangerous it would be to play games with the debt limit, and how politically damaging it would be to play politics with potential economic calamity for our country. And they finally dropped their demands. The so-called Boehner rule died, and no amount of wishing by the Tea Party is going to bring that back. Madam President, the Republican strategy now of holding our economy hostage and trying to push us to another crisis is absolutely the wrong approach. And holding our budget conference hostage so they can get to that point is not going to be considered well by the American people. Getting a deal is not going to be easy. Any one of us knows that. It's going to take compromise. But this constant lurching from crisis to crisis that the House is demanding and is strategizing around is not what the American public want or deserve. So, Madam President, I'm here today to say Democrats are ready to take the next step. We need a negotiating party on the other side. They can bring all of their bill to conference and we can talk about it. We can find out a compromise. Compromise is not a dirty word. Oftentimes, we don't hear it a lot around here. But I believe many of our colleagues, on both sides of the aisle, frankly, want to return to regular order. They want to move away from these constant crises. I know that's what the American public wants. They want to see that we can govern. So I really urge those who are coming up here and time again blocking us from getting to a point to debate our two different budgets and to come to a compromise to allow us to get the work of the American people done and allow us to go to conference. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor.
Madam President.